Welcome to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is the Director of Workforce Development for Living Classrooms. His name is Waris Majid. Thanks so much for being here, Waris.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, we live in this, in my opinion, ridiculous little bubble, right, where so many people have graduate degrees and great jobs, and that's fantastic. But the reality is that only 25% of people nationally will get a 4-year college degree, and only about 15% are going to get graduate degrees. So what are we doing with the rest of the population? And I think that that's where your organization is doing a great job of filling a need that is vital.
Right. Well, I definitely understand that, and I think that is exactly where Living Classrooms comes in, to fill that void. We've been around in D.C. since 2001. We've been in Baltimore since 1985, and we're serving over 40,000 young people every year.
Wow.
And we have a great emphasis on identifying those young people who possibly may not go to a 4-year college, and understanding that bringing to these young people a different choice and letting them understand about careers and some of the choices that they make, how that can affect how they get into those careers, and helping them to navigate so that they can be successful. Because, to be honest, college isn't for everyone.
Right.
And there are some people out here that are very successful and never went to college. And one of the richest people in the world actually dropped out of college. So.
Right.
So,
yes, we all know about Bill Gates. Yeah. I'm going to hear that for the rest of my life with my son, I'm sure. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's what we try to do.
So how do you identify these children that would benefit from your organization?
Well, we make sure that many of our programs are in these communities. And when I say in these communities, I mean the communities that a lot of disadvantaged young people come from. We're talking about wards 5, 6, 7, and 8 in Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, Baltimore City. A lot of these areas where the services are not, they don't have as many services as they would in many of the other affluent communities. So we make sure that we're in these communities, we make ourselves visible, and we just keep our doors open. So it's almost like a word of mouth type thing for many of the young people coming into our programs, and that's really going out into the communities and letting them know these are services that we provide, and this is what we're trying to do. So that's kind of how we address that issue. Yes.
So when it was founded, what was the mission?
The mission, when it was founded, and still to this day, is going into the communities, as I said, and working with young people and letting them know that one of our missions, of course, is a lot of the things that we do are hands-on. So it's all about learning by doing. Actually, that's our motto, learning by doing. So going in, if it's workforce development, showing a young person exactly what it takes to go to work every day, exactly what they need to do, putting them in an environment and giving them a chance. For a lot of our educational programs, because we were kind of founded on a lot of maritime programs.
Right.
So it's also learning by doing. So going into the classroom and taking a young person out of the classroom, teaching them about their environment. We have a lot of programs in Washington, D.C. where we're taking young people out on the Potomac, teaching them about the Anacostia River, just kind of being out of the classroom, doing things a little bit different, showing them that, giving them that hands-on experience. And, and that experience they can take into their neighborhood, into their families, and understand that when a real-life situation comes, they don't get as scared because they've been through it. We've helped them, and, we try to be that navigator.
Okay. So what are some of the projects that you have going on right now?
Oh, wow. So many projects that we have going on in Baltimore. We have so many educational programs and workforce development programs. We have our signature Fresh Start program, which is our 40-week job training program, and that's actually in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. We work with 16 and 19-year-old young men, many of them coming out the juvenile justice system, and we basically teach them job training, workforce development, life skills, GED training. We have actually a wood shop where these young men go in and they're building chairs and cutting boards, and they're selling these things. They're learning business models. We have here also in D.C., we have a culinary program where we're teaching 16 to 24-year-old young men and young ladies about culinary arts. They've actually spanned that off, and they now have an actual catering program It's actual business. So this is great. They're leaving the program with what we call the Prometrics Food Safe Manager Certificate. So it's a nationally recognized certificate. They can go anywhere in the United States and work at pretty much any kitchen in the United States. We have an array of educational programs. We have 3 historic ships that we have on the Potomac and Anacostia River, where we're taking out young people all the time. We have an after-school programs that we run all through the community. In Northeast Washington, D.C., Kingman and Heritage Island, we actually manage that island, so we're bringing young kids out there, school-age kids out there all the time, just learning about the environment, how to appreciate the environment. We also we have a Camp Fraser. It's in
for summer camp.
Well, yes, it's for summer camp, and any use. We use it throughout the year also,
okay.
but mainly, yes, definitely for summer camp, and that's in Great Falls, Virginia.
Okay.
And we have a historic schoolhouse in Glen Echo. So we
Wait, now do these kids have to pay for the summer camp, or somehow you get enough funding that they're?
Our mission is to make sure that these young people are able to go to the camps and to the after school programs and not have to pay.
Okay.
So we make sure that we raise these funds to make sure that they can have a chance to have a safe summer like everyone else.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And the whole fresh start thing. So I was going to ask you that because sometimes these high risk environments lead people down a dark path, but just because someone made a mistake doesn't mean they should be dinged for the rest of their life, in my opinion. So is that part of your mission too, is to make sure that, we all make mistakes and you still bring these kids back and try and get them back on the right path?
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Fresh Start, like I said, is 16 and 19-year-olds. At 16, I don't know anyone who hasn't made a mistake. It's just unfortunate that, in a lot of these young men in their environment, when they make that mistake, it's kind of multiplied in a sense. And, a lot of them, they get caught. They have involvement with the courts. And, we try to come in and just try to show them, hence the name Fresh Start. You can have a fresh start. It's not hard. We come in and we really show them exactly what they need to do. A lot of the young men, they listen, and they go on to be very successful, very successful. So that's exactly what we're trying to do.
That's fantastic. So are there mentors that come in and help with these children?
Every person that walks through our doors is a mentor.
Okay.
And we are always trying to find other mentors to come in to speak with the young men, speak with the young ladies, to let them know what their situation is, to let them know maybe some mistakes that they've made, why they didn't make mistakes. So mentors play a crucial role in the success of our program participants.
So I was going to ask you, how many people are actually full-time staff members?
Wow. In D.C., you're talking about 30 to 35. In Baltimore, that number is probably triple that. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Baltimore is really huge. And
Okay.
they're doing some great things in Baltimore.
But you still need volunteers to sort of supplement what you have, right?
Yes, absolutely. Without the community's involvement, without volunteers, we would not be able to have the success that we've had to date. So we're always looking for volunteers, and we appreciate everything that they do.
Do you have children that went through your program and then are now coming back? Because if you've been doing it since 1985, I'm assuming there's some alum that might be able to come back and provide some inspirational stories.
Well, most of our workforce development programs, and I speak a lot about workforce development because that's kind of my
you're the director of that, right?
Exactly, right. But I love the educational programs. But for workforce development, for many of our programs, we do retention for 2 to 3 years after our young people leave our programs, which is really big. In the first 30 to 90 days, a lot of times young people can go on, find employment, and do really well. But it's a year out, 2 years out. That's when those issues come in. That's when life really takes a toll on them. And some of the young people, even though they left our program and we felt like they're strong, let them go into the world, you're going to do great, they run into issues just like we do as adults.
Yeah.
So we try to make sure that we're always there. That when they do run into those walls or when they find those barriers, we try to help them navigate around those barriers. And we've had young men that come back 5 years. I'm like, okay, your 3 years is over. No more retention for you, but I'm just a joke. But
right.
They come back and, they just telling us, you guys really made a big difference in my life. It's just maybe it could have been something that we said, something we did, something that we didn't let them do. So yeah, they come back all the time. They talk to the young people that are in the program now, which is great for us because you can hear from us. He's like, "Oh, come on, Mr. Majid, you don't know about this. You grew up in the '70s. You don't know anything what I'm talking about." But when they
we're talking about growing up in the '70s.
that's what they tell me all the time, right? But they say they come back and they'll talk to the young people, and it's almost like a more of a relevant conversation with these guys. Right. And they tell them, these guys they're going to help you out. Just listen to what they're saying. They're really here for you. And a lot of times the young people, they say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to give this a chance." So they become our biggest ambassadors in a sense. Yeah.
And the children that, I know there's a charter school, right? So the children that go through that charter school, they also do things like the after-school programs, and they do some of these camps. Is that normal?
Yeah. Every program that we have, we follow that motto, learning by doing. So if that's an after-school program, if that's one of the charter schools, if that's one of the programs on the boat, if that's one of the job training programs, they all follow that motto. So we make sure that we're not as traditional as some of the other programs. We want to make sure that young people understand what it means to get out, get into the environment. How do you take a problem that you would do in math class and make it relevant to the world? How do you take something that and that's basically what we're trying to do, to show them how things kind of go together. And that really helps them to really understand and really start using problem solving and really thinking for themselves. And at the end of the day, I think that's what makes our program successful, and that's what makes our graduates successful, the young people that come through our programs, because they're able to think for themselves once they leave. And that's really important.
It's important at any age, at any level.
Yeah, right.
But if someone wanted to apply to the charter school, so would they get information on your website for that?
They would go to www.livingclassrooms.org, or if they wanted to find out more information about the DC sites, they would go to www.livingclassroomsdc.org, and all that information is on those sites.
Including the camp stuff, everything?
Everything you want is definitely on those sites.
Now, what if somebody wanted to volunteer? What's the best way to get them to volunteer?
I would also suggest that they go to the website.
Okay.
Of course, our doors are always open. We're located for the DC office, we're located in the southwest waterfront. So always coming down and just knocking on the door. We would love to have you. Okay. And in Baltimore, we're just all over Baltimore. We're all over Baltimore. So just coming in and just we would love to have you. Absolutely.
How involved do these volunteers get? Is it a one-time thing? Like some people, they go to the soup kitchen and they do something for the day, or they'll go to Manna and distribute food for the day. How involved are your volunteers usually?
I'm going to say it varies. And it depends on the program. It depends on the time that the volunteer may have.
Right.
We have a lot going on, so there's always an opportunity to volunteer. So yeah, I would just say it really does vary.
Okay. So somebody could just sign up to do a one-day involvement versus other people that may want to do teach a class or something and be involved for 9 months.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, just Kingman Island. Volunteers come to Kingman Island on a weekly basis. And you're talking about whether it's just cleaning up, if it's volunteering with a school. There's so many opportunities to volunteer. So I would definitely just suggest that, anyone who wants to volunteer just goes to that website and just kind of looks and see, where they would fit in best at.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause, we're working with young people from as young as 5 years old and as old as 24 in most of our programs, and we have, programs in Baltimore that really don't have a cap on age, so it's plenty of things to do.
Okay.
Yeah, plenty of things to do.
We're going to take a short break, and then we will be right back.
I'm home, and I love it. I'm home, where I belong.
It's always nice to come home, but many Americans are at risk of foreclosure and losing their homes. Making home affordable from the U.S. government has already helped over 1 million struggling homeowners like these. The sooner you act, the better chance we can help you.
I'm home, where I belong.
Welcome back to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. Today we're talking to the Director of Workforce Development at Living Classrooms, and I'm so excited to have you here today. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
So, Maurice, we were talking about volunteering, right? And here's my 2 cents on volunteering, right? My observation is that, in the beginning, obviously when we're in our 20s, we're like trying to, hold down a job, find a spouse, form a family. And so we're kind of focused on all those things, right? At any level, no matter whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or, the plumber, it doesn't matter. Like, that's what we're all working on. But at a certain point in our lives, usually, like it's people my age, right, when they hit 40, they want something a little bit more meaningful and maybe something that's going to impact, their community and be part of like just a bigger movement. So I find a lot of my peers are now looking for volunteer opportunities, which is why I love, bringing on nonprofits that need volunteers and kind of, helping people understand that these opportunities are out there and they can actually make a difference, even just 1 hour a week.
Right.
So I also find it helpful when people understand, like, the motivation that leads us to do certain things. So I have to ask you, like, what is your story behind you getting involved with Living Classrooms?
It's a very interesting story. A lot of the young people who we work with in Living Classrooms, I can really relate to their story. A lot of the challenges that they've gone through, I've went through myself. And in my earlier days, I was what they call an advisory neighborhood commissioner. So it's basically a person who really looks at their neighborhood, sees some of the issues that they have, and tries to address them. And being young doing that, I used to have job fairs. I used to go and try to find young people jobs, of course using my own money most of the time to do a lot of things. And one time I was just speaking at an event just about the neighborhood and what I wanted to see happening for the youth in the neighborhood. And 2 gentlemen that came to me afterwards, and they just said, I would like to speak with you one day and, see if you can help us out. I said, sure. So they actually came on my job, and we were talking, and halfway through, we were having lunch, actually. Halfway through the lunch, I was like, is this a job interview? And they were like, yeah, we would love for you to come on over and, see if maybe you can be an asset to what we're doing over here at Living Classrooms. And, I just went home, talked about it and thought about it and prayed on it, and I just came on, and I've been a part of Living Classrooms for the last 5 years.
Wow.
Yep.
And I bet the kids can really relate to you, right?
Yeah, well, I try to tell them all the time, I'm like, listen, I'm not telling you anything I haven't been through. And, if I can do it, you can do it. And I think that story alone, that helps out, more than almost anything else that we can do. Just the fact that they know that, what, this is not somebody just come sitting here and saying, oh, do right, do this, walk left, walk right. No, I had to make those same turns, and I had to navigate, and I had to figure things out. And I want, for you at the age that you are, if you listen to me, you don't have to make as many mistakes as I made. And a lot of times they just shake their head like, you know what, I'm going to give this a chance, and become pretty successful by doing it.
So these kids, let's just say they don't have the best role models in their own personal lives, right? Like, how do you teach a child the basic skills that some of us take for granted, like you have to get to work on time, you have to dress appropriately, you have to listen to what your boss says, even if you may not like it, but you have to be diplomatic. And so how do you teach those things?
Well, you definitely knocked out a couple of the main ones, which is being on time. That's like the main thing for us, and being professional. Whether that's your attire, the way you're speaking, the way that you interact with people. So it's not easy to address those issues, but what we do is going back to our motto, it's learning by doing, and just really that experience of each program that we have. Like with the Fresh Start program, you have to be there at 9 o'clock. You're there at 9:01, you're late. And we use a system to actually evaluate these young men on a daily basis. So how me and you will be evaluated for our first 90 days, and then once a year after that, we evaluate our young people every day. So they know that you have to be on time, because this is essential for you keeping this job. This is essential for you getting this job. You can't show up at the interview late. You can't show up at work late. You have to be dressed professional. You have to be, I want you to think professional. We just try to change everything about these young people when it comes to the way that they've been taught what a professional person is. Because the truth of the matter is, most of the young people who come through our program, they've never seen a man go to work. They've never seen someone who has to work on a daily basis, or who really understands that, these are things that I have to sacrifice to get to the next level. So, you know, we have to be that professional person that's in their lives, that's showing them on a daily basis, and we have to live that example also. I can't be late to work,
right.
You know, so that makes, you know, a big difference also. Yeah.
Can you tell me about one of your favorite success stories?
Oh boy, I don't want to use the word favorite because I don't want anyone thinking
right.
that I've left them out, because I have so many.
Okay.
But I can just tell you one of our programs, and I keep going back to the Fresh Start program because it's the program I started at, and I love this program. But we actually have in D.C., we have young men. They're 16 and 19 years old, like I said. They're coming out the juvenile justice system. Most of these guys have dropped out of school. I mean, the average Fresh Start student is reading on about a 5th grade level. We actually entered a competition called the First Robotics Competition. We entered it last year, and these young men, with help from our mentors from the Department of Transportation, going back to volunteers,
okay.
They come over to our site and they help these young men to build a robot. And that means build a robot, I mean from scratch. They drop off a box of parts. These guys work sometimes on the weekends. They're supposed to leave every day at 3, 4 o'clock. Sometimes they're in there 6, 7 o'clock. And they're working on this robot. And they entered this competition last year. And we were the first alternative educational program in this competition in the metropolitan area. And we held our own. I mean, we did well. These guys were excited. It was like a Super Bowl. And I mean, just to see, you know, their faces, I mean, they were just so excited to be competing against, you know, some young people who, I mean, from birth were just, you know, afforded so many opportunities. Right. And, you know, just had the chance to, you know, to actually to do this and to be in the arena with these guys. And they understood that they do belong, you know. And this year, again, we're doing the competition again. And it's actually March the 28th to the 30th at the Convention Center in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And, I mean, this is going to be a big event. And these guys are, like, excited. This is their 2nd year, so we expect to do even better. We expect to win this year. So, yeah, I mean, for me, that's like one of the biggest success stories because, I mean, these guys, they belong. And you know, for them to know that they belong is really big for me. So I love that competition. And I love, you know, the way our young people have really bought into, you know, just the STEM education and Department of Transportation. They came over with their volunteers. I mean, it's just been a great relationship. Yeah.
Wow, no, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of events coming up, right, because you guys do a lot in terms of fundraising and putting together some really cool events. Are there ones coming up that you would want to highlight?
Yeah, well, like I told everybody, the robotics competition is coming up March the 28th through the 30th. April 27th on Heritage and Kingman Island in Northeast Washington, D.C., we have a Bluegrass Festival.
Oh, cool.
Yes, that's going to be super cool. In October, we have our 2 signature events. In Baltimore, it's Maritime Magic, and in D.C., it's a Night at the Yards. So, and you can find out information on all those events on our website, of course, www.livingclassrooms.org. And we are also looking for volunteers for those events also. And a lot of these events really help us to be able to achieve our goals in working with the young people that we do.
Speaking of goals, like I know you're really, really involved in Baltimore and just starting to really ramp up in D.C. So is that part of one of your long-term goals?
We would love to be as successful in D.C. as they are in Baltimore. We do a great job with a really small staff, but Baltimore is just huge, and they are doing so much for that community. It is just beautiful. In D.C., we're actually right now we're looking at expanding our spot. We are in the southwest waterfront, and we have a capital project that's actually hopefully be kicking off very soon. We actually have a central location for our workforce development programs, for some of our educational programs, so young people can actually come to a center and they can actually feel like it's a little bit more of their own. We definitely would love to eventually in the future have our own charter school here in Washington, D.C.
So you don't right now?
We do in Baltimore,
right,
but we don't in Washington, D.C., but that is definitely an area that we're definitely looking at. Yes. Yep.
That's fantastic. So if people wanted to just donate, you can go to the website and make a donation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I guess the other thing I have is like these volunteers, do they ever take on like a mentoring role with some of these kids?
It's important that they do. A lot of our volunteers probably don't come in the door thinking that they're going to be mentors. But when you come to our programs and you see our young people and you see their faces and you understand just how special they are, and the fact that if they just had that extra little bit of someone just pushing them, or just that experience, they come in and they just can't leave. And hopefully we'll have some volunteers coming from Montgomery County that'll do the same thing.
Yeah, well, that's my hope too. But sometimes I guess my concern is that you're dealing with some children that are in a very high-risk area, right? And there's got to be other services you must rely on, right? Because if these kids are, dealing with parents that are getting evicted because they're not paying rent, or maybe they've lost their job and so they don't have enough to buy food and put on tables. So to me, it's like you're just part of this whole emergency room process, right? So are you also relying on other resources, because you can't do it all?
We can't do it all. That's absolutely right. One of the things that we try our best to do is to collaborate with other organizations. We definitely make sure that the city is one of our partners. I believe that's one of the reasons we've been so successful in Baltimore and so successful in Washington, D.C. Just going out and finding all the different services that any young person may need, and their families. Living Classrooms is really big on understanding that to change a situation for a young person, you also have to change that family situation. You cannot just attack the young person. It really is a family effort. So whatever services that family may need, we try our best. If we don't have it in-house, we go out, we try to find it, and we try to keep those relationships really strong and healthy, so that when a young person needs something, that we're able to navigate him to whatever area, him or her, to whatever area they may need to achieve that.
That's a great point. Some episodes ago, we had this person come in who was talking about a kid gets a DUI, right? And it's not just about getting that child the services he needs, but actually it's usually a wake-up call for the whole family. What else is going on in that family structure? Same thing with a child that has special needs, right? It's not just about getting that child services.
Yeah.
Other people have said it's also about getting parents the help they need, the support system, because you're right. It's more than just one person. It's an entire group of people that need to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about it's empowering the community. It's empowering our young people so they can go out and be the leaders of tomorrow. And at the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to do. Whatever approach that we may use, at the end of the day, if we know that our young people leave our program better than they came, and they can go into their community and be that leader in their community, our job is done.
You're right, and you don't have to be a doctor, lawyer, banker to be successful. It's how you define success.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. It really was.
Thanks. So if you have any show ideas or would like to be a volunteer guest, please feel free to email me at genxmarty@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Making It Last.